Welcome, everyone, to Career Happy Hour. I'm Andrew Beach. I am a teacher of self-education. I help professionals communicate their value to find great opportunities faster, whether they're working or not. That's through a pragmatic process of branding, planning, and effective networking. It's so funny when I start telling people about branding and sharing a brand statement. Um, Vanilla Ice came into my mind, and I thought to myself, I'm really good at, he said, yo, you got a problem, I'll solve it. So if you go look up that particular Ice Baby session. Anyway, I digress. It's New Year's. So happy New Year, everyone. Hopefully you had a great holiday season. The new year is upon us, and next week is the beginning of something new and fresh. Although every day, in my opinion, is an opportunity to begin again more intelligently, as Henry Ford used to say. And every day is the beginning of a new cycle, 90-day cycle. The world, for whatever reason, financially and somewhat literally, runs a 90-day cycle. So I always look at it as today is day one of a 90-day cycle. So if you're joining for the first time, welcome. I'd encourage you to actually put any questions that you have into the chat, whether you're joining by YouTube, Periscope, Facebook, or LinkedIn. LinkedIn is where most of my followers come from. Then I'm here to answer your question. So what question do you have? And that's why I'm here every Friday, 3 o'clock Pacific time. We get together as a community to do a couple of things. First, I'm here to answer your questions. It's a way for me to give back to the community that's been so supportive to me. So it's a way for me to say thank you. And then the second thing is we encourage you to interact with other members of this community. And we signal that, or we do that by sharing in the comments, the chat, whatever, your LinkedIn profile, because professionally speaking, if we're looking to connect as professionals, the number one platform for that activity is on LinkedIn. So if you're joining by YouTube or some other, Twitter or what have you, then certainly go ahead and go over to LinkedIn and check us out there. Any of the links in the description should contain that information. So yes, please put your LinkedIn profile in the chat, and that will allow us to actually connect and have conversation that way. Also, some folks come to this session and they just kind of sit there passively. They're not wanting to let anyone know that they're maybe in the market for something else. And if that's you, that's fine. There is a link in the description to have you come into the back, what I call the green room here on Restream. It's the green room. There's a private chat. You can put your message in there and just say, hey, Andrew, I have a private message. Put your name in as anonymous. And that way I can answer your message without you signaling to everybody in God's creation that you're in the marketplace. So not that that's a bad thing, but some people like to keep it secret. Totally understand. Now, if you come into the back end of Restream and you want to get live coaching from me right now, you can do that. You can just click that link in the description that says join me live right now. And you're more than welcome to do that. So let me just confirm. It looks like we're live on LinkedIn. We got that part covered. And on the other channels, looks like it's coming there too. Let me check the description here and make sure. Yeah, it's over on the left-hand side. It says here, join Stream Live for free video coaching. That's the link that would take you into the back end. So I will put that also into the, into the comments box here on LinkedIn so that you can have that at your fingertips. Good. So there's something on my mind that, we didn't have Career Happy Hour last Friday. It was Christmas Eve. I had family over, so it just wasn't a good time, time-wise, good time for me to do that. But I started thinking this week about a number of people I've run into that are really worried about work from home going away, and the end of work from home could be on the horizon. So yeah, let me make sure I have this up here. Good. So let me get some of my notes here. I did take some notes and prepare some thoughts or ideas, but I want to back up a little bit. I've been doing this this live session on Fridays now for quite a while. And in fact, it started gaining steam, I think, when the pandemic first started. So people came here to find guidance and perspective, and for what it's worth, they got some insights that they were looking for, and that I think that's great. But I can remember when the pandemic first started, how much fear there was. Um, People couldn't go anywhere. I mean, I remember, you could visit somebody at their home, but you had to stay outside and look at them through the window. I remember trading Christmas gifts on the front porch of my home with masks on. And, we would just trade the gifts and say Merry Christmas, and that was it. This year we had, I think, 18 or 20 people at our home for Christmas. And there weren't any masks or anything like that. But, I guess the point is, when this thing first started, there was a lot of fear because we didn't know a lot about what what this illness or this particular virus was all about. I think we know a lot more about it today than we did when this thing first started. And so, it's not uncommon that change in perspective, or that change that came upon us outside of our control, created a lot of stress and anxiety and fear. Normal. And in fact, change is hard. If you think about it from that perspective, change is hard. When change comes to you, in this case, at the beginning of the pandemic, people are like, wow, I don't have an office to go to anymore. And it was almost like overnight. Um, I don't even remember people actually going back to the office and gathering their things. Some people had a laptop or something, or assets emailed or mailed to their home. People were building out home offices. I saw people turning she sheds or man caves into homeschooling facilities. Right, there was a lot of change going on, and at first, the pandemic created a lot of fear, uncertainty, doubt, a lot of things going through people's minds, anxiety, and after time, I think as you settled into a rhythm, and we talked about this, you can go back and look at the videos that we talked about this. Hey, at some point, this is going to become kind of status quo. And when we're talking about professionals trying to gain in their careers, networking is a part of that. And we talked a lot about how networking had to be changed up, and that it was actually a good thing that people were working from home, because likely, number one, they weren't going on a commute, and there was a lot of virtue that they were discovering in work from home, and people were starting to embrace that concept. And yet, I don't think there was a situation where people wanted to be at home all the time, 24/7, and there was blurring of the lines between work and home, and where is my time versus the company time, and how do we draw a line there? And so many organizations were fearful that people wouldn't work hard or get work done. My fear was people would work too much and not create boundaries in order to have a healthy life balance with other things in their life. And so that did come to pass, and many people maybe are still struggling with that. And when the pandemic first came on, there were some pretty substantial life events that got missed, like graduations from college or high school, um, weddings, funerals. I know several people in my circle that had passed, and they didn't have the chance to do had to do any kind of service or celebration of life outside of something virtually. I remember that first Christmas we did a family Zoom. Right, we had people from all over the country on a Zoom for a couple of hours, and that was fun and great and everything. But I don't know. I'm getting to the point where, and many of you may feel this way, where work from home is enjoyable. I don't know that it's sustainable for everyone. There might be a select few people that can entirely be isolated on their own in a house doing work, but I'm just not one of those people. And a lot of people are fearful about going back to work in an office, especially if they've relocated or perhaps not relocated, depending on your situation, to the location where their job is supposed to be. And I talked to several of my clients that, hey, they work, say, in Portland Metro, but guess what? They're not living in Portland Metro. They're in Bend, or they're in Cincinnati, or they moved back closer to family in Florida. I mean, everybody was working from home anyways, right? And so they may or may not have had that a conversation with their employer. And so this is a concern that many people have, and organizations to varying degrees are consistent or inconsistent in their way of approaching this and setting up policy and letting people be inclusive. We talk a lot about, I think, across LinkedIn and that sort of thing, in this area of, say, HR, talent, or diversity, equity, inclusion, whatever you want to call it, about inclusion. And the idea here is organizations are making decisions, say, on work from home, not work from home, hybrid. What is that going to look like? They're making decisions on vaccine, no vaccine. What is that going to look like? They're making decisions on masking, no masking. And often, as you see evidence, because people are working remotely, they don't feel like they have a voice in those decisions. And even though you may have company listening tools, whatever that is, like Peakon or some of the Medallia or some of the other listening tools for your employees, even though you have those, they're just giving input. They don't feel like they're part of that decision. And I think as organizations, we need to be really cognizant of the fact that people may make a decision to stay or not stay based on the fact that we're including them or not in some of these decisions, and coming up with something that's I wouldn't say a compromise, but that's a win-win, And part of that is just being really honest with what's coming and giving people, asking people. This is something that I think a lot of leaders maybe are missing or getting wrong, is that they're not talking to their people. And because they're not in the same office or having those 300 or three-dimensional conversations in person, it's over a Zoom or a Microsoft Teams, that you're missing some of the context. You're missing sidebar conversations. You're missing people's real feelings, because you're not getting the full texture of their nonverbals. And that's something I think is one of the reasons that a lot of organizations maybe, you can probably map this out too, is what happened to the utilization rates of something like your EAP. And so if somebody's reaching out to EAP to get some therapy or some counseling because, they feel kind of isolated and alone, and they want to talk to somebody about it. Maybe somebody is facing anxiety or had a situation. But anyway, the utilization rates of your EAP, my suspicion is they've gone way up in the last 2 years, that the utilization there is probably higher than in the past. So if companies are tracking that, that may be a metric that you take a peek at. And I think is a valuable tool to have for employees. Absolutely. I'm not denying that fact. But part of it is knowing that the decisions you make are impacting human beings. It takes extra care, for sure, extra care. And so let me take a look at some of my notes to kind of get off track. But at this point, I think we're seeing that people have normalized work from home. They've normalized, okay, here's my work, here's my office, here's my home, here's where I'm going to work out, here's things I'm going to do with my family. And so they've kind of they've kind of gone through the change of working from the office to work from home. They maybe have appreciated and enjoyed that. Not everybody has. And now it's getting to the point where there's another change that's coming, where people will likely go back to the office. And going back to the office is going to be yet another change. And it's not uncommon that people are resistant to change, that they have some anxiety, that there's going to be a period of time where there's storming before there's norming and performing, right? And so the thing each one of us needs to discern, or at least consider, is how are we going to process that? How are we going to manage that? How are we going to, as professionals, have these difficult conversations? And you can go look up things like, we could probably do a session or two on crucial conversations. We could do a session on two. I was presented by a good friend of mine that I do a podcast with, Scott Picard Jones. He told me about situation, behavior, impact. And I think these tools, these communication tools, are something everybody should work to increase their capacity in how they express themselves with confidence. And when there's lack of confidence, there's lack of belief that what you say is true. Because I could say something totally off the wall that's a lie, and somebody would believe it because I said it with confidence. And that happens every day. And the idea here, though, is to have open, open dialogue, frank conversations about your desire or not to go back to the office. And if you're thinking that there isn't a middle ground or a win-win situation, then I think you go into that conversation setting yourself up for failure. One of the things I would advocate is having regular conversations. When we started this pandemic as leaders, we needed more conversation with our people, not less. Not that people wanted more videos or more Zoom or more, they want more dialogue where there's a time for them to be heard. That's what they want. They don't just want more Zoom or more training program, video training programs, or more Microsoft Teams meetings. No, they want to know that they have been heard by a person, by a human being with a heart and a pulse, because that's what relationships of trust are created on. The fact that people feel heard and they feel valued, and you're building trust through that process. So there's more, and now we're getting to another milestone where there's more communication will be necessary and required. And those companies and individuals that participate in more frequent, honest, transparent conversations, open to a win-win situation for both the organization and the employee, are going to come out on top. They're going to have higher retention rates. They're definitely going to have more productivity, because now I'm not worried as an employee about, where am I going to be next month? Am I going to be here or going to be there? Is my work still going to be honored? Do they even care about me? I mean, that's the funny thing, is that some people feel like it's just a job. They shouldn't care about me. And yet they feel like it's such a big part of their identity, that it is kind of like family. When you're talking about work, it's like family. You're around these people more hours of the day than often your own family, and therefore it feels like family. So if we're going to go into this situation in 2022, where likely we will see a tapering of the virus, that's how I see it. That most people, we probably reached herd immunity at some capacity. And now it's time to go back to the office. Now, what that looks like is going to be different for every organization. But as an individual, we need to make a choice for ourselves as to what is optimal for us, and decide whether or not that optimal is attainable with our current employer. And if not, we need to come up with a plan that gets us to where we want to be. And there's never been a better time to have those conversations than now. And just because there are more opportunities available doesn't mean they're easier to find. I think that's a fallacy that a lot of people think, that just because there's more opportunities doesn't mean they're easier to find. Because if we just look at what the market is providing us as professionals, then we're overlooking the fact that there may be something created for us that's an exact fit. And part of the process that I talk about with my clients is, first we have to come up with a brand, and that might take some effort. But the second part is the plan. And the plan is about your preferences for skills and work and geography, and at home or in the office. What kind of hours do you want to work? Do you want to work weekends or not? What kind of work week do you want to structure for yourself, right? We start thinking about the ideal and see how close we can get to that ideal. And once we have that picture in our mind, we have a brand and we have a plan, going and doing effective networking becomes a whole lot easier, because we know who to talk to and what questions to ask to see if what they have to offer us as individuals, as professionals, lines up or not. And that's a proactive process. Better to do that while you're working than being perhaps let go or transitioned out. And everything runs in cycles. And right now, I think we're kind of on the top end of a cycle, and likely that things will, as they almost always do, things will correct, and you'll be in a position where you have an exit strategy prior to that correction. And start thinking about all the industries that are high now may not be high then. So I think, one of the, and I've talked about this before, one of the industries I think that was hardest hit in this pandemic is hospitality. So if you look at things like, hotels and travel and things like spirits and beverages and wine and so forth. A lot of these things didn't have an on-premise component, and people were really challenged that way. And I understand why, because you're not going to a restaurant anymore. You're not going to a hotel. You're not doing overnight stays. You're not traveling on airplanes. Of course, that's all changed now, but back then you weren't. And so I don't think that those industries, a lot of them may not recover. A lot of those restaurants, at least in our local area, your mileage, of course, might vary, have closed. And so where's the opportunity? And I see a lot of opportunity coming in the entrepreneurial space, is people are taking control, or taking in some capacity their own path, building their own business. And it's really exciting to watch members of my network start up a business, spin it up, and I'm here to support them. Absolutely. If they need anything, and that's true for you too. So if you have certainly any questions about your career, about leadership, personal branding, negotiating, how do we navigate these waters, of going back to the office? Because I don't know that work from home is dead, but I don't believe, for me, that that's a sustainable strategy. I enjoy and I appreciate being around people. And there's a lot of energy that comes from that I think we miss when we're isolated and alone, or separated in some way from the people we're intended to be working with. And so it's, working for and working with is two different things. And working with people is a lot easier and more productive, I believe, if you're in person. And I don't think that has anything to do with, I'm sure there's some insecure leaders out there that feel like they have to be there so that they can see that the work is getting done, the line of sight. Terry Smith and I have talked about that. So if we went back and reviewed all of the sessions here, you could probably go binge watch them on YouTube. They're all archived there. You could watch the happy hours for the last 2 years probably, and get a good feel for the progression, the thought process of what's been going on in the market. And, just before we got on here, I had I heard the unfortunate news that Betty White had passed away. And such a person full of joy and great contribution to people smiling and laughing. And I hope you take that into the new year, the smiling and the laughing. And, perhaps her passing is something you will mourn in your own special way this holiday season, this new year. And, there's a time and a place to process, and a time and a place to move on. So if I don't see any questions here. So if you don't have any questions, then certainly I'm happy to go for the weekend, grab myself a cocktail. This is career happy hour after all. And I typically don't have cocktails during the happy hour, but I do have them after the happy hour. And, family is awaiting, and I figured I'd tap in here and see how I could help support your success and give you some thoughts about work from home and so forth. You can certainly reach out to me if you're interested, in the description below, or even on my profile page. I do offer career coaching and leadership development coaching, and all sorts of different things, training programs and whatnot. If you have interest in those things, I do have an application. Just fill out the application. There's only 3 required questions. And, if you want support from me, that's great. We'll find out if there's a fit. And if there is, we'll move forward with a coaching program. But other than that, I hope you have a happy, safe new year. And we will see you in 2022. Bye now.